I cannot claim to have witnessed the efficacy of spiritual practice that's motivated by anything but the wish to discover the end of suffering before the end of the body. To be both selfish and sensitive to the feelings of others, such that there's a chance to feel the pain one has inflicted on another, can create recurrent, unwanted memories that are, ironically, the dry powder for the next round of actions that will be regretted. But they can also be a motivation to look inward and be free. A cycle of unwanted thoughts leading to regretted actions can be recognized, and its cause can be considered. The quest to find relief from unwanted thoughts is widely recognized as a valuable practice. Anybody could recognize the value of that pursuit. On the surface, the benefit is just the absence of those thoughts, but there is more to be discovered in the managing of unwanted thoughts than the state of being that immediately preceded their appearance. If the way that unwanted thoughts are dealt with causes a change in the way that thoughts and circumstances are reacted to, the consequence of that inner arrangement can be unanticipated. Things don't go back to how they were, because there's an irreversible realization that nothing that's aware can be anything of which it's aware. This breaks the emotional linkage between the body-mind and the energy body. When thoughts are no longer taken to be original content, but rather more ripples in the splash that made everything, there's no sense that they relate to anything that's aware of them. Awareness has no qualities that relate it to anything appearing in it. Awareness has no form or provenance. It's not more like one object than another because it has no differentiating qualities. Awareness is no more what it perceives than a display panel is what it portrays. This type of talk is not an academic pursuit. It's a description of something that can be realized more than just understood. And that realization provides insight into one's own unconsciousness that can be generalized to humans at large. It's like a line that's crossed that can't be uncrossed. Maslow's pyramid of self-actualization can apply to self-realization if one's position on the pyramid, meaning one's circumstance, is so intolerable that it leads to obsessive thinking. That obsessive thinking can either be a loop that drives one to madness and self-destruction, or its role as the agent of some inner lacking can be recognized. People who have ideal lives are not guaranteed happiness. This is a fictional story, but I think it's true to life that Richard Corey put a bullet in his head. There's plenty of people who have all they want and yet are miserable and self-destruct. But if your life is otherwise stable, there are fewer things to be worrying about. Enlightenment, nibbana, is so uncommon that people don't believe in it. It's so uncommon that there are misconceptions about what it is. It's simply the end of suffering. When suffering ends, a lot of other things change along with it. Because desire is suffering, it is the end of desire. To have no desire makes things optional, many things optional, and there's a different accounting of the cost of doing things relative to their benefit. While things can still be enjoyed, the requisite desire that generates the planning that makes them happen doesn't really spool up like it did. There's no sense that there is a mission to be accomplished. There is a recognition that a lot of things go into whatever happens. It is recognized that thinking does things to your state of being that precipitate action, but that thinking alone does nothing. And this is evidenced when the gears of identity are stripped of the teeth of belief and thoughts can no longer turn the wheels of emotion. When the machine of the conceptual self is broken, the ensuing stillness allows for a broadening of the scope of perception. There is a severing of emotions from circumstance. The inconvenience of a circumstance is recognized, but the emotions that would have once accompanied it are missing. This isn't to say that the fight or flight mechanisms are broken. They are not. But the power of ownership isn't there to cause suffering in the face of loss. There are traditions that see the point of existence as being the opportunity to realize the non-self nature of thought and form. There has to first be this ignorance of body identification before there can be this realization, which means there has to be embodiment. To anyone who is contemplating an early exit, I would say there is still yet a discovery to be made within yourself. And it's not through some worldly achievement. You could do 1,000 lifetimes worth of adventures and never break through the illusion of separation. It isn't about bootstrapping or being a scholar or competing to discover another way to perceive reality. But it does take a motivation to look within. This crossroads of ending versus continuing can be a place from which to consider the source of suffering. Presumably, there's a suffering which could be due to frustrated life goals, but beyond that, at the pointlessness even of succeeding. The most successful and high-profile people appear to be still always trying to get more. There is something that drives them, and it's also their source of suffering. But it goes to show that no amount of worldly success can procure for them that which can be sought from looking within.